is meningitis something that like you contract? Like how do you get meningitis?
It's airborne, kind of like COVID. And generally the people that are most affected by it are the teenage population. It's generally going to be where you're in an environment where you're in a close proximity with lots of other people, like in dorms, or where you're at, like parties, or you're sharing drinks, or you're sharing, when you're more of a communal kind of environment, really is where it's most prevalent. But it has happened to people that are, I know of somebody that happened when they was 39, and he survived. He lost his legs below the knees, but he survived. So, but I would say, and I'm just kind of guessing here, but my educated guess would be that probably 90% of the time it happens for people that are between the ages of like 12 and 20. But since I'm an advocate, there's an organization called the National Meningitis Association. So I've connected with them, which is one of the cool things about the podcast, is I've connected with a lot of great people and other people that other meningitis survivors and people that have been affected by meningitis. And through Instagram and things, I find people through the meningitis hashtag. I'm tracking 2 babies right now that are in the ICU with meningitis, like newborn babies. So
newborns.
Yeah. And it can happen to anybody, but it's most common between like 12 and 20. And I was 19 when I had it. So it is scary, but there are vaccines for it, and they are very good, and they've been around for quite some time. So they're very good.
Are most people vaccinated for this? Like for example, I have a lot of vaccinations as a kid. I have no clue actually. I don't know what what
sure,
they were.
You mean you don't carry your vaccine cards around with you from your... So the answer is likely, but not necessarily, okay? So the meningitis ACWY, there's 5 strands, they're letters, ACWY, are 4 of them. There's one booster for that. There's one immunization for that has 2 shots. There's one when you're 11 and there's one when you're 16. And those...
it's funny you said booster because it's probably what just top of mind.
Yeah, that's the world we're living in now, right? So
yeah.
That vaccine came about at around 2005. So if you were not a toddler in 2005, like if you were less than say 12 years old in 2005, chances are you probably don't have it, just because it wasn't available. But if you were born since 2000 or so, chances are you've got it, because it would have been in the normal rotation by the time you got to age 12.
Yeah. I was born in 1990.
So yeah, there's a good chance if you did your normal pediatrician type checkups and things into your teenage years, there's a pretty good chance that you've gotten the vaccine, but there's no guarantee. But what's happening now, which is alarming with COVID, is that with everything being crazy like it is, people aren't going to the doctor like normal. So that doesn't necessarily affect you and me, but it does affect the teenage population that might be between the ages of 11 and 15 right now, that maybe they haven't gone to the doctor because of COVID, and they're missing those vaccines. So the push that the advocates like me are trying to make is just to reiterate to people that when you're talking to your doctors and your pediatricians, make sure and there's other vaccines that people should be getting too outside of COVID. There's mumps, and I have kids, small kids too. So we've got all kinds of vaccines and things going on, and there's a long list, and the schools also have things that point out to you what they should and shouldn't be getting. So there's lots of things that can remind you, but nothing is a guarantee, just like life. You've got to take care of yourself, and nobody's more responsible for you than you. So you've just got to be aware of those kind of things. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just awareness.
Yeah, well, I'm glad there's a vaccine, and I'm glad that you're spreading the word on that. And
my kids are not old enough to have that meningitis vaccines yet, but I can guarantee you they'll be having the meningitis vaccines, along with the other ones that are age appropriate for them. So yeah, it's a scary thing, man. It is scary. It can take the life of it's a miracle that I'm here. It really is, because there's a few times in there where things happen that are hard to explain, that I made it through it. So I'm very blessed to be talking to you and doing what I do every day. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep some of your story a mystery since you're writing a book, you know.
I do have to keep some of it a mystery because it is a pretty good story, and I've left out some of the intriguing parts. So yeah. And
I'm sure if you're listening, I'm sure listeners can go listen to your podcast and probably learn more about your story.
There's lots of pieces of my story. Yeah, we do. We've talked about meningitis and the other things too. And I've got a series I do with my wife called Questions and Answers. And I answer common questions that people have about meningitis and mostly about visual impairment, though. I try to explain my vision. You know, we've talked about vision being a spectrum and how difficult it is to describe to people because people pretty much think you're either totally blind or you're normally sighted, and anything in the middle doesn't make sense to anybody. And so I live in the middle, and there's a lot of people that have diseases of the eye, or in my case, like an acute injury or something that causes something in the middle. And it's hard to explain living in the middle sometimes. So that's what we do. So there's all kinds of information about that on the podcast. Yeah.